Hello and welcome to our third Wisden Ashes Daily podcast from Manchester. Another extremely good day for England. They are 6 wickets away from levelling the series going into the 5th Test match at the Kia Oval. I'm Rana, and with me this evening is Melinda, Farrell. Implausibly, Mel, we had an afternoon session that rivalled yesterday's. Jonny Bairstow finished on 99 not out, stranded on 99 not out, but put on 60 odd or 49 deliveries with Jimmy Anderson at the other end. Just as things were calming down, we had a relatively sedate first session by the standards of yesterday. England did in England again. Just on Bairstow, an extraordinary knock from a guy who's been under a lot of pressure in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and perhaps some of that's a little bit unfair. I know he certainly feels so. We've just come from a press conference with him, and it's clear that while he says he's switched off from it all, he's not been completely immune to all of that. So to see him do that was obviously brilliant for him, and it was different to what Stokes did, in that it wasn't like, okay, this is the short boundary, I'm just going to belt it for 6 when they're bowling from this end. It was far, I don't know, he trusted Jimmy, but it was like Australia were kind of playing into his hands a bit. Some of the shots he played were absolutely brilliant, and the smarts to be able to run through on the byes as well. It was just like he had the game under control. It was his game today. It was Jonny Bairstow's innings, that one was, and just left the Australians looking bereft of ideas. But for Jonny Bairstow, it doesn't matter that it's not 100. That's just as good as any 100, or it should be anyway. And it might silence his critics a bit. On the back of taking that really good catch yesterday, even when he took that catch, I heard so many people talking about whether it was actually bad footwork ending up looking good because of some athleticism. Well, at the end of the day, he took a brilliant take, and it was some superb athleticism, whether or not you want to talk about his technique. And he's backed that up today with a great performance with the bat.
Mel, you'll know that there are a few things working cricket, quite like a Bairstow press conference after he's had a good day. And I thought it was really interesting how he really wanted to make it clear that how much he's struggled physically since he's come back into the side. And he made the point he's barely kept wicket in the last 3 years, even accounting for that leg break. And I think that for all the discussion on Bairstow versus Folkes, etc., today's like today are exactly why England value Bairstow so much. And I guess you can almost see one of the differences between the two sides in that England focus on what can they get from every possible situation, what can individuals do. And the game was fast forwarded so much because of that Bairstow innings, and actually England have injected so much time into the game. You know, England are built a lead that's effectively an entire day of Australia batting because of that Bairstow knock. But I'm really interested in Australia. There's supposedly a 9-day gap between the two test matches. It doesn't really feel like there's been a 9-day gap between the two test matches. And you made the point earlier that everyone seemed to know what England were trying to do, that as soon as Australia went short, they'd run through a bye. But Australia kept to that plan.
It was bizarre because we were just up there, and it got to the point where everyone in the press box was laughing because you just saw you were waiting for the short balls to Jimmy. You were waiting for Jonny to run through for the bye. After 4 balls, you were waiting for the field to come up. It was really bizarre that it was so obvious. It was like watching reruns of the same TV show, but expecting there to be a different outcome. And it wasn't just Jonny Bairstow out there, right? He was batting with Jimmy Anderson. They put on 66. Jimmy Anderson faced 18 deliveries all up. 17 of them were either bounces or back of a length. One of them was at the stumps. Guess which ball got him out? So I get, bowling short to a tail ender, fine, push him back, whatever. But that was just all they did. There was no adaptation. There was no just try and get a couple in straight at him. It was like, okay, we've got to keep him on strike. What are you keeping him on strike for?
Yeah,
to get him out. Right?
What I don't understand is I think Australia were really good at Lords at adapting to when Stokes was on that mad one. There was that period where Stokes scored 50 runs in no time, and then they just hid the ball outside off stump, and Stokes really struggled to score, and that's when they got him out. That's when they win the Test match. There wasn't that today. There wasn't the adaptation. And I think comparing the two sides, England, to their credit, adapted their game plan. I think at the start of the series, they probably didn't expect Australia to be as defensive with their fields, and they were probably took a test match too long to adapt to those changes. But now England are very content going at 4-5 and over. You came over to us early in the day and say, like, England keep on taking 6 runs and over here without taking any risks, and Australia haven't adapted back to that.
No.
So what you have is England have these periods without taking that much risk, going at 4-5, 6 runs and over even, and then they still have their crazy burst where they go at 10s, and then suddenly the game really kind of runs away from Australia. What do you think's happened to Cummins and Stark? One test match ago, 9 days ago, the Australia attack was basically Cummins and Stark and the rest. Here, they bowled 48 overs between them, maybe even more. Not a single maiden, going at 5.5 between them. What do you think's happened there? I mean, obviously, 5 test matches in 6 weeks is going to take its toll on bowlers like them.
Yeah, well, maybe the answer is in there in what happened at Headingley, that there was so much on them, right? And maybe that takes not just a physical, but a bit of a mental toll as well, in that not being enough. It's just really weird, because it sort of looks like the non-gap between Lords and Headingley has actually been the size of the gap in this, because it just feels like it's gone straight on, and England have swept all the feel-good vibes from that Headingley win, and they look like the team that's 2 up in a series and dominating. And I go back to Ben Stokes saying after Lords that he felt the way that team plays, they were in the perfect position in this series. We're not there yet, but gee, that looks like that was actually, a lot of people thought it was bravado, but actually I think he was really onto something. Whereas Australia look like the team that's not the front runners. It's quite strange. And we've just come from a press conference where Josh Hazlewood was asked if he'd be really happy if it rained for the next 2 days.
And he said yes.
He said yes. And I thought...
What do you make of that? Because it's not just that. I thought Australia's best bet today of slowing things down was taking that new ball and taking wickets, restricting England's lead as much as possible. Why delay it 10 overs? And actually, you saw that when they took the new ball, they took wickets and slowed them down for a bit. When you see them do that, when you see them not be that adaptable in the field, and then you see one of their premier bowlers who's taken a fifer say that they're hoping it rains. Obviously, a fan will say that, you know, but elite sportsmen, you don't really expect them to say that. You know, if I imagine England in the equivalent position, I don't think English players would be saying that they're hoping for rain. So what do you make of that kind of passivity, negativity?
Yeah. I mean, he did say earlier in the press conference, to be fair, that they would be taking the approach that they could still win this match. But again, you don't know sometimes what people say in press conferences when the media is all there, if they're sort of taking the party line. For me, that comment about the rain was far more interesting. I don't think it would go down well with a lot of former players, put it that way. I think what you said about the adaptation stuff is right. Like, even with the team selection, in the end, with them going with Marsh and Green and not having a spin option at all. And they've said, you know, let's see what happens, because maybe we were right. But they have strengthened their batting tails. Almost like I think they wanted Marsh's batting and Green's bowling, and actually couldn't quite decide. So again, it's being willing to take a risk, adapt, and they sort of seem a bit risk averse. I won't say defensive like some people have said, but they've gone into a lot of series with, okay, this is our mantra for the series. And it sort of felt like they've gone into their mantra for this, and this is how we're handling Bazball. But it's like, we're not going to be affected by Bazball, but it is like it's happening.
They're actually being as stubborn as people were saying England were at the start of the series.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't avoid it. You can try and avoid it as much as you like, but it feels like now at this point in the series, this Test series is happening to Australia. Australia are not happening to this Test series. It's the other way around, and it just feels like they're being buffeted around.
Yeah. One person who's making things happen at the moment, Mark Wood. The pitch is still very, very flat. He takes 3 for nothing basically, or 5 or 6 overs in the afternoon and evening. He has been such a difference maker this series, and actually England just look like a completely different threat with the ball with him in the side compared to him out of it.
They do, and what I love, well, him and with Chris Wokes in this test as well, he's been really good. They haven't just got one plan or one trick. There's a real variation to this entire bowling attack, and they may have stumbled upon it in ways that were not planned. But I think it's actually been a really happy accident that's brought all of them here together at this point in time. But just that the pace at which he's able to, he's not just bowling short. He gets one with a short ball. He gets one just bowling, using the pacing, drawing the edge. He's just been so good. And maybe this rain, look, if they come out for short bursts tomorrow, they can keep him fresh. They've not had to turn to Stokes at all, which is great. And it's just been so nice to see him back and bowling at such high pace. And when you are bowling at that high pace and being quite accurate with it as well and quite smart with it and changing your plans, having something for different batters, being willing to change it up a little bit. It's been brilliant to see him do that.
Well, that's it for today's show. Cheers, Mel. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow, and let's just keep our fingers crossed that the rain stays away.